Hmm? No.
We're starting.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Nihar Gokhale, and I'm the Associate Editor of Land Conflict Watch in Delhi. And welcome to this edition of Monday Fix titled Coastal Calamity. So there are conflicts over coal-based projects across India's coast. Uh, Goa and Tamil Nadu are emerging as prominent coal hubs. Ports, highways, and railway projects are coming up to transport the coal to power plants and steel plants. And these have already attracted criticism for legal violations and lack of consultations. Today, we'll try to learn about what these projects are, what are the similarities and differences in the projects, and what it means for all of us. Um, I think I'll let Nilankur first speak first, and then we will get to the panel.
Hi, thank you everybody for participating in this important Monday Fix discussion on coal and the calamities that it brings along. Here in Goa, we have seen impact of coal transportation in Vasco and a bleak, dark future of Molle National Park. We have seen protests and mass movements against this malady. And now it is important that we see various case studies of impacts of coal and make an informed decision. To tell us more about the Goa-centric issues, we have Abhijit Prabhudesai in panel today of Goa and Kolsonaka movement. We're looking forward to hear from you, Abhijit. And our moderator is Nihar Gokhale today. He brought together with him the sharp panelists to discuss this issue. Nihar is associate editor at Land Conflict Watch, an independent network of researchers and journalists documenting land conflicts in India. He has been a journalist for close to a decade, and he's written about environmental regulations, property rights, and resource governance. And with our Monday Fix programs, we bring together perspectives of various issues to keep you engaged, our participants inspired and sharp. We'll put up a contributions link and request participants to donate at the end of the program. And a basic hygiene rule of this meeting is that all the comments and queries you can post in the chat box, and we or Nihar will take cues from there. And we request participants to please keep your mics mute and videos off for better reception. Now I request Nihar to please start the program. Thank you, Nihar.
Thanks a lot. Good. Like I said earlier, today's Monday Fix talks about coal hubs across India, and we'll first hear from people from Goa and Tamil Nadu on the experience of coal projects there, and then we will move on to understand what are the implications of this of this program. So first, I would request Abhijit to please speak. Abhijit, as Nilankur introduced, is with Goa Kolsonaka and also the Federation of Rainbow Warriors, and has been tracking the Goa Coal Hub project for at least 5 years. I mean, that's how long we have spoken about it. Over to you, Abhijit.
Hi. Yeah, so I guess I owe it to you guys to first give a background on Goa. Goa is a tiny strip of land with Western Ghats on one side and the Arabian Sea on the other, just about 40 kilometers wide and 100 kilometers long. A very small piece of land, yet unique because it's the cradle of civilization which is dated at least 12,000 years, and we have highly developed agricultural lands along where the sea has actually been reclaimed to create the beautiful paddy fields and bunds with coconut lines of coconut trees. These are all created by man, and so we have an amazing system here where lands have been held in commons since times immemorial, and therefore no conflict over land actually in the past. But in recent years, every piece of land, every piece of water in Goa is in conflict with numerous interests from mining, real estate, and industries eyeing for the same land to usurp it from local communities who have been looking after it sustainably for thousands of years. So this is a story of Goa, land where there's conflict over every piece. And in the midst of this, in 2016, January, Mr. Nitin Gadkari came to Goa and announced that he's going to modernize the port, Mormugao Port, which is, the port lies at the mouth of River Zuari, and it's the best natural harbor in the country. Because the reason is the rivers of Goa and of the Western Ghats flowing westwards into Arabian Sea are generally deep and therefore ideal for shipping. And therefore, the British built this port about 140 years ago, and which developed into a port city, Vasco City, and hosted this port from where the British actually took out all our resources and brought in the industrial goods from Europe to sell to India. And this port was now supposed to be modernized. There was an announcement made in January. And a few weeks later, when we were at NGT at Pune regarding another matter, a group of fishermen from Mormugao, and obviously because this is a deep port, it's got huge fishermen communities living on all sides of the city. And this group of fishermen came in alarm saying that capital dredging had been started in the Vasco Bay, and where all the fisheries would be destroyed, and they wanted to stop it. And therefore, we filed a petition before the NGT. The fishermen filed it, and we were there in assistance. And the NGT immediately stopped the dredging, termed it illegal because it was being carried out without environment clearance, and actually quashed another letter which MOEF had given MPT, stating that they didn't need to hold public hearings and for any of their projects. And since that letter was revoked, MPT was forced to hold public hearings for the four major projects. One was related to dredging, and the other three related to expansions of berths for coal. So these coal projects were now under public scrutiny, and when the people of Goa researched on these projects, they stumbled upon this, dark secret, which was the massive coal plants for Goa under the Sagarmala program. And it's basically the Sagarmala program is possibly the fountainhead of all these coastal projects, because that's the only objective is to increase shipping through our rivers and coasts. And what was found was most scary. The Sagarmala master plan is looking at transporting 136 million tons of coal through Goa into the hinterland of Karnataka, where massive power and steel plants have been planned. And the requirement of coal is so huge that if the Sagarmala master plan goes through, Goa is going to be a complete dark black, a black hole in the middle of the Western Ghats. And obviously, once the people got aware of this, what is going to happen, they came out in numbers for the public hearings held in April, May 2017. And the projects were stalled only due to public opposition. These projects remain stalled, and Goa has been handling coal from 1999 through MPT in order to serve Jindal's steel plant at Vijayanagar in Karnataka and other smaller steel industries around. And there has been massive opposition from the residents of Vasco City over the last 20 years, but to no avail. The coal has steadily increased to a level of 12 million tons, which it attained in 2016. But because of public opposition in 2016, and primarily because people found out about the Sagarmala master plan, these projects remained shelved until COVID struck us. Taking advantage of COVID, the government started pushing one part of the coal program, which is the double tracking of the railway tracks. We must remember, ports cannot operate without connectivity. Commodities which are brought to a port need to be transported, and therefore you need railway and road or waterway, whatever connections from the port. And the same applies for MPT in Goa. The coal can be evacuated only through the single track which runs through densely populated villages of Goa and then runs up through the Western Ghats through tiger reserves and in Karnataka, and equally important tiger habitats in Goa. So this single track which runs through the steepest terrain in the country can only carry 12 to 15 million tons of coal. And if they want to achieve 136 million tons of coal, they need to build a second track to carry another 15 million tons probably, maybe a third track, which will probably devastate the entire Western Ghats of Goa. But not just that, they need to build highways, to carry it by road, and they need to convert our amazing, highly biodiverse rivers of Goa into, navigation channels, basically lifeless shipping channels, and bring in coal into all our villages, hundreds of villages situated by the river side, and dump them into our, heritage Khazan lands, amazing prime agricultural lands, and transport them through our villages to these destinations in Karnataka. This is the scope of this project, and obviously the impact is going to be horrendous. Not just the Western Ghats in our villages, but if they dredge our rivers the way they wish to do, even our beaches are going to disappear. Tourism is going to be non-existent anymore, in the future. And but the people of Goa are fighting for their environment and for their future. And this is a big struggle, which actually took off because what happened is in the midst of COVID, in order to build the second track, land acquisition proceedings were started. And that's when people came out despite COVID in large numbers and have been fighting to stop the second track construction, which is the first of the infrastructure projects that is being pushed. The river dredging projects are being pushed, but people are fighting in a massive way and have used tools like the Coastal Zone Management Plan to thwart the plans of the big corporates. And the corporates in the picture are doing their bit. They have leased, the berths at our port, MPT, have been leased out to Jindal, Adani, and Vedanta for their coal operations. And so our struggle is against these three corporates. That's the position. And people are adamant. People are not going to allow these things to happen.
Thanks, Abhijit. Now we move on to Pooja Kumar from Chennai. She's a researcher with the Coastal Resource Center, and she works on issues of land rights, coastal zone management, and environmental justice issues there, and also particularly the big coal complex coming up north of Chennai. Over to you, Pooja.
Thanks, Nihar. It's really nice to be here this evening. I'm just going to quickly share my screen so I can show you some of the presentation. Is my screen visible? Yeah. Okay. So today I'm going to present a few cases from Tamil Nadu that's turning into a coastal coal capital at an astonishing rate. So it all goes back to the notion that coastal spaces are open, unused areas that have a compelling need to be monetized, and this is at the rate. This is at the price of obliterating the role of coastal people, environment, and livelihoods. So big businesses and governments, as Abhijit mentioned earlier, are on the job of monetizing India's coast by setting up industries and ports, tourism, real estate, etc. As he also mentioned earlier, this Sagarmala program, which is basically nothing but just an idea in the minds of coastal planners and lawmakers, is it's an ambitious multi-billion-dollar sort of program to pump in investment into the coastal spaces of the country, and this has been modeled on China's port-based development model, and the same sort of idea is sort of being perpetuated here. So Sagarmala is nothing but a chain of ports that sort of act as the driving force for coastal development. So most importantly, apart from modernizing and construction of newer ports on our coast, these coastal economic zones have been sort of demarcated and are being pushed on India's coast, and these are areas where ports and port-based industries, port-based networks are built. And this has sort of translated into a lot of these coal hubs that have mushroomed along Tamil Nadu's coast. So we have a coastline of about 7,000 kilometers that have more than 600 fishing villages in the in the coast. And here we're seeing that from the north, right from the North Chennai industrial cluster to the Thoothukudi industrial cluster, which is the oldest coal-fired thermal power plant in the state. We're seeing a lot of these coal-based industrial hubs that have come up on the coast, and in all of these negotiations, the small-scale artisanal fishing communities have been fenced out of these negotiations. And it also has led to a degradation of coastal environments, because a common thread that connects all of these coal hubs is land use change and contamination, water pollution, air pollution, and a declining state of public health. So one of the areas that I would like to focus on is Ennur, which is located about 20 kilometers north of Chennai city. And this area is a vast, it's a wetland complex that drains two main rivers into the Bay of Bengal, the Cox's Taleyar and the Araniyar. In Ennur, coal-fired thermal power plants to a total installed capacity of about 3,000 megawatts are located within a 2-kilometer radius. And two ports are operational: fertilizer industries, petrochemical industries, and now a new proposed mega port that is sort of looking to handle 320 million tons of cargo per year by the Adani Group is also being proposed here. Apart from this, an additional capacity addition of about 3,500 megawatts is also proposed. So in Ennur, the main problem is the contamination of the Ennur wetland complex. This picture over here is a fisherman holding the sediment from the river bed, which has completely been replaced by ash because of the kind of handling of coal ash in this area. So all of the the two PSUs that operate here, which is one is the government of Tamil Nadu power plant, and the other is the NTPC power plant, and both of these have dismal ash handling sort of processes. And so thousands of tons of ash are discharged into this wetland complex that also serves as the livelihood space for about 6 fishing villages that are inland fishing villages in this area. And so the picture on your top right is just of shrimp and small fish caught by this fisherwoman on these in this river. And you can see that ash deposits are everywhere. So bottom dwelling species like prawns and crabs literally spawn and grow in coal ash. Apart from that, it's also a public health disaster because coal ash is everywhere. It's in the water, it's in the air, it's everywhere. And that's a picture of a small boy playing in the Buckingham Canal, which is also contaminated heavily by coal ash. This is a village called Seppakam, which is located right at on just near the near the ash pond of one of the power plants in Ennur. These are what used to be the floodplains or the salt flats that also serve as a flood buffer for the Araniyar and the Cox's Taleyar rivers. Now, government of India is in the process of leasing out their salt lands for what they say as other purposes. And so large companies, including government help PSUs, have bought salt pans, which are essentially wetlands, and have been converting them into coal ash disposal areas. And Sepakam, which is a village whose the people in Sepakam, their traditional sort of livelihoods was salt farming, and so this salt farming sort of village has been completely transformed into a sort of dystopic area where it's like acres and acres of coal ash around this village, and you can see discharge from the ash pond floods this village, and houses have been flooded by coal ash slurry. And people who don't have the economic or the social mobility to be able to leave the space still continue to reside in this village and sort of face a lot of health problems. And so we did a study to understand what was the impact of coal ash on the health of the people in this village. And almost everybody we spoke to, 100% of the respondents reported that they had severe respiratory illnesses as well as skin problems in children because they were being exposed to coal ash slurry day in and day out. This village, also because of its location, being surrounded by industrial wasteland, has no basic facilities like drinking water or healthcare, or no public transportation ply to or from this village. And so life is really horrible in this place, and this is the sort of externalities of our coal sort of addiction. And so one of the residents said that if we dry anything outside, whether it be vessels or clothes, it will be covered in ash and dust in no time. And even if we go stand on the road for a while, we get covered in ash and dust. So very similarly, just about 10 kilometers from this village is another village called Kuruvimedu, which translates into Sparrow Hill in Tamil. So it used to be a little hillock. This village is to be located in a little hillock just near the Ennur wetlands, and because of its location, it used to be frequented by a lot of sparrows. And this is also a salt farming village, and now the areas around the this Kuruvimedu has been converted into the NTPC's 1,500 megawatt thermal power station and its ash pond. Thereby, now Kuruvimedu is not a hill anymore because the areas around the village have been paved and constructed on. And so we are seeing that there's this village is now getting flooded every year because of the altered contours in this area, and so there are definitely, it's no more hill, and there are no more sparrows in this village. So if this top right picture is a woman who is showing me a picture of showing us a picture of just a photo in her house, and that's covered in dust from the power plant. And the photo in the bottom is a small sort of hotel, a Murugan hotel, which serves as the only restaurant or the only food source for the people in Kuruvimedu against the backdrop of the power plant. So moving on to another area in coastal Tamil Nadu, the Kadalur district, which is already a very heavily industrialized district, because this is Kadalur is where Tamil Nadu has set up its largest industrial estate, the Sipcot Kadalur Industrial Estate. Where a lot of chemical manufacturing, paint manufacturing, fertilizers, all of these sort of highly hazardous industries have been set up. And in order to support the needs of these industrial estate, a very large power plant has been constructed on the coast of Kadalur. This is a joint venture between the government of Tamil Nadu and a private company called ILNFS. So a total installed capacity of 4,000 megawatts has been proposed, and this power plant has been built just about 100 meters from this village called Pudukuppam, which is a fishing village. And right now, I think about 1,200 megawatts are operational, and the rest is under construction. And this particular village, this Pudukuppam in Chidambaram Taluk in Kadalur district of Tamil Nadu, has been facing the brunt of the operations of this ILNFS power plant. And so, primary schools and elementary schools in Pudukuppam are covered in coal dust from the plant storage yard, which is just which shares a compound wall with this elementary school. So there's a coal yard, and then there's an elementary school just like meters away, and of course, no, mandatory sort of, covering of coal storage areas or keeping the coal wet. All of these is on paper, but it's not enforced, and so none of those sort of rules are followed. And so here in Kadalur, this particular thermal power plant is now looking to, it was built on a 100% imported coal license, and now because of like non-viability of imported coal, that's what they say, they want to shift to lignite coming from Neyveli lignite mines, one of India's biggest lignite mines. And so lignite being even more polluting kind of coal, this shift is being opposed by the people in Kadalur. The other case that I would like to share is a slightly positive one from Cheyyur. So Cheyyur is a beautiful coastline, coastal stretch in the Kanchipuram Chengalpet district of Tamil Nadu, and this coastline is dotted with sand dunes and palmyra groves and coconut groves, and it supports both fisheries and agriculture in a very intimate sense. So there are people growing, paddy, the people growing horticulture, the people having, coconut groves just meters from the sea because of the presence of these sand dunes that act as excellent sort of sponges for, for salinity. And so the water in Cheyyur is amazing. And this is exactly the reason why, this place and its sort of local economies are flourishing. And here, Government of India identified Cheyyur as being one of the sites for their ultra mega thermal power plant projects. And so a 4,000 megawatt thermal power plant in a captive port to handle coal for this power plant has been proposed in Cheyyur. And since they got their environmental clearance in I think 2013, the fight to ensure that this plant does not come up here has been taken by the fisher folk, the agriculturalists in this area, and for 10 years they've been able to stall this project, and this and not a single brick of this power plant has been allowed to be laid in this area. And now, since the 10-year license period for this power plant has sort of expired, they are now trying to to get a fresh clearance. And this again, this plant again is trying to shift from imported coal to domestic coal. But a new EIA process, including a baseline health assessment, has been ordered by the MOEFCC in this area. And so the fight is still on, and they're trying to ensure that this project is shelved for good from this area. So while we're looking at this picture, there's also a question in all of our minds, which is that, is there a future for coal, given the context of, the given the context of climate change and what are the sort of projections for the future. So in 2018, the IPCC recommended for a drastic reduction in coal consumption by 2030 and a target of nil consumption by 2050 if we needed to stay on the mitigation pathways to sort of limit global warming to an additional 1.5 degrees from where we are today. Coal plants in the pre-construction phase was recommended to be cancelled, and existing coal power capacity was also recommended to be halved by 2030. These seem like a good pathway to ensure that we can sort of limit warming, but the reality is very different. So in Tamil Nadu, we're seeing that as of 2018, Tamil Nadu has a total installed capacity of about 13,000 megawatts, and what is under construction now is close to 6,500 megawatts, and plants that have obtained environmental clearances but have not commenced construction or are in the pre-construction, pre-permit stages are 12,000 odd megawatts, and in the pre-permit stages, which are being planned, which are under planning, is about 11,000 megawatts. So if all of these all of the plans that are in the pipeline for Tamil Nadu are to materialize, then we're seeing at least double the total installed capacity right now in the next 2 decades. And that is going just the right opposite what IPCC is recommending for the rest of the world, us including. So while we know that coal has climate effects, what's often invisibilized or really not spoken about is the local effects that coal has. And so, total landscapes are transformed, and climate resilience and the natural sort of buffers that these or the ecosystem services that these landscapes provide are obliterated. Local economies are erased, and livelihood costs from the sort of dwindling traditional livelihoods are externalized. Human costs are made invisible, and all of these costs are again externalized, because none of these coal-fired power plants are going to pay for any of the health damages that they've caused to people living in the vicinity. And while all of these plants make their way to our lands in the name of development, lived experiences tell us that none of these so-called development has improved quality of life or made local communities better socioeconomically. So only impoverished local communities and dwindling quality of life has been felt in all of these spaces. And so these local effects are important to be kept in mind while we're talking about what is the future for places like Goa or any of the other coal hubs that are being planned in India. So I'll end there, and I'll be happy to engage with everybody in the question answer round.
Thanks, Pooja. And what really comes across through Abhijit's and Pooja's presentation is also how even though the coal itself is different between coking and thermal coal, and even though the coastline is different and the ocean is different, but the environmental violations are similar, the air pollution and the general lack of regulation. Now we move on to the second part of our discussion, which is with Braduti and Patrick, both of whom have also co-authored papers on this subject and called it India's New Coal Geographies. So I'll first request Braduti to start. Braduti Roy is a PhD student at the Institute of Environmental Science and Technology in Barcelona, and she's an executive committee member of the Indian Society for Ecological Economics and is also part of the Environmental Justice Atlas team. Over to you, Braduti.
Thank you, Nihar. And thank you, Abhijit and Pooja, for this wonderful insight into Goa and Tamil Nadu. I'm also going to start sharing my screen. Can you see the screen? Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit of the side of socio-environmental justice and conflicts, which is what I work on. This photo is taken from Dhanbad. The last time I was back home. I grew up very close to Dhanbad. I grew up in Bokaro, and from my understanding, what is being proposed in Goa is kind of similar to having these kind of train wagons going around, turning the state into a coal hub. So what I want to talk about today a little bit, which Nihar mentioned before, is also the similarities and the dissimilarities between the new geographies which are coming up, which I think Patrick will cover more, and how these patterns keep getting reproduced, not just in India, but also globally. So I'm going to try to do a little bit of linkages, and I would be very happy to engage and discuss more. To give you a background of what I do, I am a part of the Environmental Justice Atlas, which is a collaborative mapping project using an activist academic co-production of knowledge, and it gathers conflicts, socio-ecological conflicts, and the environmental justice movements which are fought globally. And it categorizes it into 10 separate categories. You can see them as the different colors. And it has about a 10-page form in which we try to standardize the different ways in which the outcomes, the actors mobilizing, the impacts, the NGOs or the EJOs involved, the other stakeholders involved, and then short descriptions of the project, the finances, and finally whether the activists or the people who are filling these cases consider it a success, a failure, or not sure, and what are the parameters for that? Has there been a legal success? Has there been a stoppage of a project, or has there been changes in the legislation? And the idea is to kind of look at global patterns in what we try to understand as statistical and comparative political ecology. And in this case, India, not surprisingly, has the highest number of cases reported, around 340 cases. And out of which, this is a global data of all the conflicts which involve fossil fuel. And in the case of coal in particular, but also fossil fuel in general, one of the narratives which we see being very dominant is the understanding of climate change, the fight that a lot of movements pick up using the narrative of climate change. And what we've tried to understand also is how is that different in the global north and in the global south. For example, what power does saying that we do not want a coal-powered fire plant or a new port or a mine to come up because of climate change or because of more local manifestations of protest, as Pooja was describing a little bit before. So what we try to do is that we took all the cases of fossil fuel and we saw what were the main motivations between the reasons for mobilization, whether they were reasons for livelihood, whether they were reasons for pollution, whether they were reasons for climate change, whether they were reasons for other kinds of related conflicts. For example, because of a coal mine coming up, the water resources were being extremely harmed. And because of that, there is a lot of protest which happens in Colombia, for example, where the main reason is indigenous territories and water resources. And you don't see such a strong case for climate change. So the idea was to kind of have a more broad-based analysis of why people protest against coal in general and against fossil fuels coal in particular and fossil fuels in general. And from there, coming to India, these are all the cases which have coal as the commodity, as either the primary commodity or one of the commodities for which there is protest happening. And there are about 73 cases of this. You can see them in the coast, but you can also see them in the mainlands. You can also see them up in the north, and then there are a couple of cases in the northeast. The recent ones with the conflict with rat hole mining in Meghalaya, and the plans for having the coal mine in Dehing Patang in Assam, which had a very huge mobilization 4 or 5 months ago. So from looking at all these cases and from trying to understand what are the different ways in which coal is contested, in the Indian context, first, it is important to note, and it has been written by other people like Kuntala Lahiri, that there are multiple geographies and economies of coal which exist in India. And Kuntala Lahiri had given 4 different economies of coal. And in all of them, you see that the conflicts, despite the scale, despite the temporality, the conflicts occur, people are protesting, and the reason for the protest are social, environmental, and cultural. And I will talk a little bit about the cultural aspect soon. But what we also found, and what connecting to what Pooja was saying before, is that despite the IPCC mandates, despite all the reports which say that in 2015 there was a report which said to make sure that there is no global warming above 2 degrees, 88% of all the coal reserves which have been found should not be mined. So basically leaving the coal under the hole. Yet despite these mandates, and despite the fact that more than 75% of India's districts are vulnerable to extreme climate events, the plan from the Indian government is to extract 1 billion tons of coal by 2023 and 24. And this is done in June, I think all of us came to know about the commercial coal mining of 41 new coal blocks. But this is in addition to plans in the next 5 years of expanding around 193 already existing coal mines. And along with the 41, there are also other plans in pipeline, if you look at the government documents, of having 55 more new concessions of coal mine. This is within the country. Along with this, there is also the import, which is happening, the import of coal to have all these thermal power plants in the coastal regions and in other parts of India. So despite the narrative that India is, because in the international arena, in the climate negotiations, India has a very strong position as a country which really is pushing for renewables in its energy plan. Despite that, the reality is India's energy transition is going towards more coal and not away from it. And this we can see as we start digging deeper into the documents of how many new environmental clearances are being given, how many projects are in different places, in different parts of construction, planning, pre-planning, and what is the trajectory that India's energy transition is going to take. And the narrative that this supports is that we need this for development. The first narrative is that we need this for jobs. We need this because India continues to be energy poor. And we need this because these are the local aspirations. Again, it doesn't take a very long time to debunk these narratives, because to give one very small example, the new commercial coal mining plan, which came out in June, had these big numbers of there's going to be so many number of new jobs created, and there's going to be so much new revenue which will come into so much new revenue that would be generated for the self-reliant India model that we're talking about. And then Sandeep Pai, who is also a coal researcher and a journalist, sent an RTI to the government saying, can you please give me the documents or the data or the sources from where you're generating these numbers? And he got a reply saying, we don't have any data sources and in an official document. And then this was, and then he put it on Twitter, and then he got some replies, but no official reply of where these numbers are coming from. So the number that this would lead to new jobs, more employment, development of a place is questionable even in this level. I mean, so to try to see that the level is, there are no numbers to support this. Then if you start talking to the people, which Pooja was explaining so well, is that you completely change the way people relate to land, livelihoods, ways of being. There is such a lot of health impacts, not just in terms of health impacts because you're eating food which is full of fly ash and coal dust, but also in terms of you're breathing in the air, so you have higher chances of black lung disease. You can see this report from 2018, which said that there had been at least 76,000 premature deaths because of non-compliance of emission standards. And there was a recent report which said that around the different coal-fired power plants, 80,000 to 115,000 premature deaths have occurred in India. So the human impact, the health impact, and then there's the impact of culture, which is something which we don't talk about as much as we talk about land and pollution, but which is also very, very present, because the second photo is this recent fight that is happening around the Kutipalli port and how it will impact the Pulicat Lake. And what they're saying is we are going to completely lose the kind of food we have, the way we cook, the way we are culturally, the way we have culturally lived in this lagoon area for so long if the port expansion goes on. And this is something you see not just in India, but in different parts of the world, of how you completely remove people's relations to land. And during my fieldwork in Jharkhand, I've also seen it, like how a new mine or a new power plant, when it comes up, even if it has all the right forms of, even if it adheres to compensation, and then we can have a discussion on what is a fair compensation, no? This aspects of what it does to culture and what it does to the belonging that you have to a place is completely ruined. And this is also one of the big consequences of these big projects in the name of development, which, as Pooja was saying, in the end, basically what happens is your quality of life degrades. And then there is this whole argument of how do you measure quality of life, this whole understanding of the incommensurability of value. You cannot measure everything in monetary terms. Issues of sacredness, issues of cultural identity, issues of belongingness, issues of how community and solidarity and conviviality, these things are formed, cannot be measured by displacing somebody and reallocating them somewhere else. And there has been enough literature to support this document over the years. And the final point that I want to highlight in what coal projects in general, but any kind of massive projects does, and I think we have seen this in Goa and Tamil Nadu and other parts of India where people are protesting against coal for local effects or for climate change, is how over and over again there are direct and indirect and invisible and structural and slow and cultural and different types of violences which the people who are in the front line defending the land, defending community, defending the planet are facing. And this is the report which this organization, this UK-based organization called Global Witness, takes out every year to see how many land and environmental defenders are killed each year for defending land and environment. And this is from 2017. You see India is quite in the red zone. And in 2019, you see India has the third highest number of killings per country for land and environmental defenders, with mining and people protesting against mining and extractivism being the highest. And this is just direct violence, no, people kill. But beyond that, it is all these other kind of threats that land and environmental defenders face: judicial harassment, threats and attacks, use of force in peaceful protest, and different kinds of structural violence, which I was trying to connect a little bit when Abhijit was talking about how there was no information before. The fishermen saw that dredging was happening and then went and filed a petition and then came to know. So all these different subversive ways in which these projects keep proliferating in different parts of India and in different parts of the world. And this is something which we do in the Environmental Justice Atlas, which is basically to visualize more that how people who are fighting against coal, I mean, you can make the justification that people who are trying to stop coal projects, be it ports for importing coal, be it coal mines, be it thermal power plants, are doing it for, I mean, the science on climate change is very, very obvious. So they are doing everyone a favor. And they are doing it to protect the local communities, to protect the rich biodiverse heritage, and yet are the ones who are who are being harassed, threatened, in worst cases killed because of doing that. And this is something which in my opinion is the kind of injustice that you can, I mean, you can think of it as there are people who are being harmed to make sure that every one of us can live sustainably and within our means in the world, in this planet, and what are the consequences they face for this, for stopping these projects. And I think, yeah, with that, these are the three main points that I want to make. To be aware that what it does to the local relations that you have with the land, what it does to trying to ensure that everybody can live within the planetary boundaries, and to be aware that the cost that the people who are in the front lines defending, and you see this very visible in coal conflicts everywhere in the world, but in mining and extractivism in general, face because of taking a stance to protect and preserve the planet. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pratiti, for that, and for highlighting not just the threats to people in terms of violence, but also cultural loss. And the photo of that train really made me think, and what you said, that what you see commonly in the coal mining areas, if that is what is going to be the normal for Goa, then I think that's also a big cultural change. And I don't think we have spoken about it enough. A reminder to all the participants to please post your questions in the chat box, and we'll take it up soon. Our next speaker is Patrick Oskarsson, Associate Professor and Vice Head of Division at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. And his work is on resource politics. Patrick, over to you.
Yeah, great. Sorry. Yeah, thanks. Let me try to share my screen. I've got a couple of slides as well. I think all the previous presenters have already been quite exhaustive, so I shouldn't dwell too long on this. We can have our discussions instead. But I thought I'd outline a little bit of a national perspective of this thing that we call India's new coal geography, as opposed to the more specific ways that it plays out in different parts of the country that everyone else has been talking about in great detail. Yeah, so there should be an article coming on this really in the just next few weeks. I think it should be out, where Brutoti is one of the co-authors. We're also working with Kenneth Nielsen, who's also worked quite a bit on Goa, and Kuntalala Hiridat, who has worked on coal almost everywhere, I think. Extremely experienced, of course. So what we're trying to do then in this paper is kind of what is that long-term bigger picture, the national policy changes and business investments that sort of put in motion the attempts to implement coastal coal. And the other part then is how specifically were things realigned in Goa to enable the state to move from iron ore export to coal import to feed this steel industry in Karnataka. Abhijit especially was talking about. So myself, I worked mainly in more Central Eastern coal territories. I don't have a whole lot to say on Goa specifically. Like this is coal mine close to Korba in Chhattisgarh, where I've done quite a lot of work. I mean, the first thing to point out, just a few numbers, I think several other, coal continues. So in recent years, Europe and North America reduces coal. China has already increased a whole lot. Now India seems to be the main increasing force. And the result is coal power is the same at a global level. Some reductions in some places, some increases in other parts. So heat and power production is about 40% based on coal at the most recently available that I found, which is the International Energy Agency's global statistics. So where does this bring us? So the earlier reductions in some countries are then countered by the creation of a bunch of new coal geographies. Here is some really interesting work by Cardoso and Turhan, and they're showing Colombian coal being shipped to Turkey. So really good that Prototi pointed out that Colombia has had enormous indigenous protests against land use in recent years. Turkey being one expanding, quite big economy. One set of coal links. A whole set of other coal links, coal geographies are being put into place in recent decades. Indonesia and Australia are the main exporters. China and India, the main importers, but a whole range of other exporters like Russia to parts of Europe, Colombia to Turkey, South Africa sends its coal to India, etc. Turkey, Poland, others. There's a whole set of new links being made. And each of these new patterns, of course, rearrange enormous areas of land and environments where the coal mining takes place, where the ports are put in place, the transport infrastructure across land, across oceans. The new power generation facilities take up a lot of land, generate all sorts of water pollution, air pollution in the new destinations across countries and territory. So what we then mean by India's new coal geography are these specific things. The possibility to import coal into India from flexible sources. Indonesia is the biggest, but from time to time, Australia overtakes. We have South African coal. We may also find all sorts of other sources of coal, American coal, Russian coal. It comes from a whole lot of different sources. Some of it is based on Indian investments abroad to own a coal mine or to part own a coal mine. Others are just bought on the spot market, wherever it's available at lowest cost. The other part is then the new infrastructure or the realigned infrastructure, new coal ports, railway, other shipping, construction, and transport options that allow us to move this coal for millions of tons so that they can reach that power plant. And then from the power plant, power grids to customers around the country. Interestingly then is this sort of reuse of infrastructure from the Goan case, for example, of reusing a port that became largely deserted when iron ore mining was banned to become a coal import hub. At all times, this is led by private sector investments. It's Adani, it's Jindal, it's Vedanta, similar companies that keep popping up again and again. But they wouldn't be able to do it without Indian government support at national level and within the states. At times, they get help with language acquisition. At times, they get help with lower customs to import the coal. They get help with loan facilities. And someone has to then buy this energy. So electrical long-term power purchasing agreements have to be in place, paying more for this kind of electricity. Because as we know, solar energy, for example, is available at lower cost. So why then pay extra for polluting coal? Well, these long-term agreements have been made and governments agreeing to pay for them. Over 10, 20 years to enable these vast investments. We have another publication also coming out. So this is a very nice map, but unfortunately in German. But I think you get the picture because it's coming in a German textbook, a geography textbook. But we're sort of separating them, the old geography, public sector mainly, Coal India. I hope you can see I'm trying to point here in the Central Eastern part. You see all these coal fields. Coal India extracts coals, puts it on railway, sends it to Delhi, sends it to Mumbai, etc. That was the old coal geography, power plants on the urban peripheries. And then we got this new coal geography, all along the state line. First the ports, usually quite close to the ports are the power plants. It comes from South Africa, it comes from Indonesia and Australia, typically far away from the coal mining areas. But what is new here is that it's in many cases also very far from the actual big cities, the big consumers, especially around the coast in Gujarat. Some of the coast here, like the Krishnapatnam port in Andhra Pradesh, has been a really big hub for these, for example. We're also tracing the smaller picture of Goan developments here and the realignment, including the protest that this has generated. The first part, of course, in developing this new coal geography was decades of ever increasing energy deficiencies and energy crisis, grabbing the hold of national attention. The Indian government was trying basically everything: hydro, nuclear, solar, wind, domestic thermal. Most of this didn't expand for whatever reason. Power reductions, power efficiencies were not tried as much. The result of this is that domestic coal expanded and increased its share over the years, much in line with what Pooja said, that there's no such thing as a reduction. There's actually only a continued increase. The only perhaps slight change in the last 5 years is some slowing down of the growth of domestic coal. Quite a lot of solar has come up, right? But domestic now complemented by imported coal. So in this paper, we're also tracing this sort of attempts of where did coal come from originally? How did it develop? It's basically against national policy to depend on foreign imported energy. Everyone knows that imported petroleum, imported natural gas already weighs heavily on the payment balance of payments, for example. So there are important reasons for the government to object to importing. At the same time, an energy crisis and not wanting to stand in the way of private sector developments meant, okay, let's go ahead. But we see a little bit of this national policy of part in favor, part promising to reduce, a lot of back and forth. Whenever a private sector investor seems to get into trouble, well, then the government is there to reduce some import taxes or help with land acquisition or little things like that. But it's uneasy. It's not a clear policy. What already existed, though, was the import of coking coal because it doesn't exist within India. So especially from Australia, these trade links already existed. it was already well known for years that you can transport millions of tons of coal across oceans. It costs a little bit more. You need certain port facilities, big vessels, etc. But it was only since the early 2000s that this was actually put into place for thermal power coal. So what we're seeing is a gradual experimentation, bigger power plants, the ultra mega power plants coming up in some coastal places, but also coming up next to domestic coal mines within in the more interior parts of the country. We saw that there were protests against fresh water for power plants. So then putting them on the coast didn't mean that you have to import coal, but you could get seawater. So in a sense, making it easier for them to go ahead. We also see that there's lower sulfur in imported coal compared to domestic coal. So air quality regulations might then mean, okay, imported coal or a partially imported coal can reduce some of the air quality problems as much as more coal power always means increased air pollution emissions. But it's actually some of the statistics where we see it's not only coastal power plants that import coal, but we see some of them in Punjab, for example, very far from the coast, seemingly easier to import, to get coal from domestic sources. But they seem to import even today to comply with air quality regulations. And that's one of the things that's been discussed in recent years when imported coal has become very expensive, while air quality regulations might then be reduced so that domestic coal can be used, for example. So we see this sort of little by little building up of different networks. Similarly, the ports are being established, but many of the private ones fail. But the public sector ports start allowing, just like the coal mines in central India, the ports start to allow private sector subdivisions, subcontracting. So a public sector port like Mormugao port might in effect not do anything. Just like a Coal India mine in central India, they don't do anything. They just have a sign there. The actual people lifting coal, transporting coal, buying and selling might be a Vedanta, an Adani, a Jindal. But this is where we really see the public-private collaboration and how much they merge with one another, especially in coal port operations. Adani then having a set of ports, for them it does not probably matter to a greater extent if the coal is imported from Australia or if a Goa port takes coal from Odisha, which just goes around the country. As long as they have something that they can ship, they can make money. So we see this flexible accommodation of different types of infrastructure being put into place. And from 2005-07, there was a boom then in the coastal coal power approvals. Consequently, here we see an enormous increase in thermal power imports. Before 2002, there was not even such a thing as import. There was no such statistics. It didn't exist. Thermal power coal exists within the country. It's not imported. And then we see 10 million, we see 45 million, we see 150 million. And someone had the most recent update. What was it? 250 million, I think, in the last fiscal year. Lots of coastal power plants have been built. Most of them, though, have been shelved or remain in some sort of uncertain pre-construction phase. So the coastal power has been contested just like other thermal power plants, but lots of them have also been established. So we see a lot of uncertainty. We see complaints about poor profitability, a lot of back and forth over state support in the national debates. But we don't see them really going bankrupt. We don't see them closing or anything. So, they keep running, they keep expanding slowly but surely. And now it's considerable. We hope to do some research also in the future, especially Adani and their investments in Australia have received a lot of attention, enormous investments. in terms of the mine, infrastructure, transport solutions, port, dredging the Great Barrier Reef, etc. And a significant protest movement in Australia, which I think really could do a lot to talk with the Indian movements and really link up and find a lot of common ground. Finally, the main response last year, already mentioned by Brototi, I mean, unleashing coal. Okay, instead of importing coal, 40 new private sector coal mines put up for lease. So this very unprofitable, very unsustainable sector seems to be continuing, whereas the national government mainly wants domestic coal to provide energy security rather than shifting away from it or something like that. So thanks. That was all I was planning to say. And yeah, I look forward to comments or questions about that.
Thanks so much, Patrick. In fact, I had a question for both of you, Patrick and Brototi. If I could start with you. It's very interesting that the point you made, Patrick, about coastal coal and what they say about the power plants using seawater instead of fresh water and using less sulfurous coal because it's imported. So, I mean, do you see any so-called greenwashing around coastal coal versus inland coal projects? That it's actually cleaner source, or it's actually a safer or a nicer way to burn coal? And secondly, do you see, I mean, of course, they are auctioning coal mines in the hinterland, but do you see the coal geography shifting towards the coast, or do you see it adding to what's already going on in the hinterland? Both of you, either of you can take this or both.
I can try to.
Yeah.
Well, to respond to the second question, no, I think it is not shifting per se, it's just adding more and more. So this change is being complemented with what is already happening in central and eastern India, but this is another way of continuing to increase the size of the pie. And in terms of greenwashing, because when you look at the documents of what is happening, what was being said with the unleashing coal, the captive commercial coal mining, there is also a lot of greenwashing happening there, that we are going to use very advanced technique to make sure that you have very less impacts on local impacts and pollution impacts. So it's a very interesting question to try to understand whether there is more amount of greenwashing with the coastal plants than with the ones in the interior of the country. But there is a lot of greenwashing around coal, which is happening all throughout the country. And the more you look at the documents, you can see it. Patrick, if you want to add.
Yeah, I agree. No, it is. I mean, however dirty project that anyone comes up with, there's always something that's dirtier, right? So I guess that's the starting point. I mean, what I've noticed is that, let's say, a coastal power plant is proposed and one reads one of these impact assessments, EIAs. So they're quite happy to point these things out. Oh, we will use seawater, we will use this cleaner imported coal. And yet the proponents will suggest that they are not locked into using this. So they'll first, present the benefits. Here is, if we use this, it'll be cleaner on this aspect, and perhaps there's a technical basis on that. But they don't want to be locked into it, because what if in 2 years' time domestic coal is available, and especially available at a lower price? Then they don't want to be locked in, and they'll forget about those merits. So, I mean, that's typical greenwashing to my mind. I've not thought about it in that comparative way. That could be an interesting question to think about. One could take, all the approved power plants from a specific year or something and compare regionally or something. Maybe. I mean, I guess they have to rationalize in some way. Coastal coal will always be more expensive, to my mind, because of the imported coal. I guess they'll have to provide a rationale for why they should also get a higher power purchasing price.
Interesting. There's a question for Brattati about the EJ Atlas, and does it give tips to activists to organize effectively?
Hi, thank you, Nilankur. No, so I don't think we give tips to activists to organize effectively, but what we do is, since we have networks with a lot of activist organizations around the world, if somebody writes to us saying we are having this active protest and it would help us if you put it in the atlas and if you do an international press release about it, this is something that we support. Or if you want to, and we have done these things called featured maps, which is basically, for example, there was one featured map against all the conflicts which the company Vale does. So we look at like big companies and see all the different places in the world where there are ongoing protests against it. So things which activists themselves come and say, this is what would be helpful for our protest. We try our level best to make sure that we are able to do it with the Atlas database.
Okay. The next question is for Abhijit, but it's for both Pooja and Abhijit. If you could both answer this question, is that the government is saying yes to all the projects or most of them? So Nilankur is asking if there is a legal angle that you still haven't explored. And I would like to ask Pooja also, because clearances do come in quite easily and frequently to these projects. So what are the strategies that you follow? Abhijit.
Okay. Legal avenues are limited, yet we can't, ignore them. They're part of a multi-pronged approach, which is essential if you want to take on, the coal lobby. From our perspective, the steps are, of course, to collect information, to research data and all kinds of information that then has to be disseminated to the people, and so a lot of advocacy work, organizing the people, and getting people to know the facts and to take positions on these issues, I think is the primary approach we need in present circumstances, when the judiciary seems to be drifting away from justice and and doing the right things, but at the same time legal avenues are important for us. They are part of our multi-pronged approach, and so we do use legal avenues and have been doing it in terms of coal, like the intervention when they tried to dredge the port, and interventions are going in for using the Western Ghats environmental aspects and environmental laws. We are challenging the port connectivity projects, which are the railway tracks and the highways, and also the river, changing our rivers into shipping channels. These are we are taking up all the legal options available, but we do believe that the change will come from people's movement, and and that's where we hope that we will succeed. Yeah.
Sure. Pooja, would you like to talk about it?
Yeah. So when we deal with the legalities of these cases, one of the things we often find ourselves repeating is courts are often like ICUs. meaning it's a point of no return. So it's always the last sort of option where, you know, all other options like media strategies, public strategies, direct actions, all of these, after they've been sort of, you know, tried and tested, then going to court could be an option, because the state of the judiciary in this country now is, you know, it happens to be how a particular person feels on a particular day when it comes to looking at how cases go about, right? And so going to court has always been our last option. But using the law is often the very first thing that one must do. So, you know, if we have a sound understanding of what the laws and the rules say, then that can be used to verify or fact check all of these things that these companies sort of put in their environmental impact assessment reports, or tell the MOEF or any of those things. So fact checking happens to be the most important thing, because we often find that most of these projects or any of these, you know, large sort of these projects have a certain amount of things that they try to push under the carpet with respect to, you know, what they say in the EIA. So, you know, right now we're sort of critiquing one of the EIAs prepared for the port expansion. And once you read the EIA, you see that they are substantiating everything that the local people are saying. So, and nobody expects anybody to read the EIA, right? And so reading the EIA, getting that information out to the people, I think is the first step, when it comes to, to dealing with any project, not only coal. And second thing is to verify what is it that they're saying in these reports, and what do local people see on ground. So when you're talking about, coal plants, or we're talking about land use changes, pollution, water, all of these things, visibilizing the local perspectives become really important. And often those are the kind of insights that also win cases in the end of the day. So I think that is what I would respond. And I think, yeah, I would like to hear back if anybody has anything to add.
Uh, do Prakriti or Patrick have anything to add to what Pooja said? Also, if you have your personal websites or your email address or any articles, please do share them in the chat box. This is for the panelists, so that others can also read and stay in touch. And while we are almost out of time, I had one final question for any of you or all of you. Is I'm always very curious about the difference between thermal coal and coking coal. While when we talk about coal, we typically talk about energy transitions and thermal power. I was wondering if from activists as well as from academic researchers, is there a distinction between the two? Is there a blind spot with coking coal and with steel production? Because that's a whole different economy, and you really can't produce steel without coal. At least the technology has not been commercialized to my knowledge. So is there a blind spot, and is there any difference between the two?
No, I think that's a good point. I mean, since there's no option, then what do you do at present? But the volumes are enormous. Yeah, I think it's something to work on and consider more and more. I mean, at least theoretically, there are options. I mean, this is something that's extremely important to come up with, as much as, you know, recycling, reduced use, etc., also needs to be pushed for, and isn't at all to the extent it should be. But realistically speaking, I suppose, you know, really pushing for it, because it, you know, with just a little bit of focus, I'm sure it can be done. But yeah, it requires research and development.
Okay. Abhijit, would you like to say something? What do you think of steel? I remember Manohar Parrikar, the late Manohar Parrikar had once said that if people in Goa want to protest coal, they should stop using electricity. Abhijit, do you remember that? And what did you think of that? Even though, I mean, thermal coal is a part of the mix, as Patrick and Brotodi's paper points out. But Abhijit.
Yeah, it's a very good point you raised, because most of the coal being transported through Goa is actually coking coal destined for steel plants, and you know, because the people could see that the coal is being transported by private corporations for something which is not really in public interest, because the steel is only being exported to foreign countries and not for local consumption. And therefore, when this movement against coal grew in 2017, and you know, the MPT expansion projects were stopped, the port expansion was stopped. The chief minister, you know, countered us by saying that, you know, hell, if you don't want coal, then you're not going to get electricity, you know. And so yeah, the distinction between coal being used for power plants and for steel plants is one, but also the distinction or the understanding of what is the public interest behind you know, this usage of coal, or the absence of it, you know, is, I think, something that we should research more into, and you know, and you know, disseminate the reality. Sorry, Patrick, I think.
Yeah.
Please.
No, it's really interesting you say that. I mean, our statistics also say like Mormugao port imports a lot more thermal power coal than coking coal, and they see thermal power as the big volume in the future. But I don't exactly know the difference, right? But a good amount of the steel plant coal will be thermal power coal, right? Because they have two uses. One is the furnace, and one is their own power generation.
Right.
So I don't know the distinction. Maybe it's 50-50. I don't know. I mean, they must use a lot of electrical power within the steel plant, which is not just the furnace. But that's something I would be interested in knowing. And same with cement plants, for example. They'll have coal just to power their own power plants, the big ones.
Sure.
Okay, we've come to the end of this session. It's been really good. Would any of you like to make final comments for our listeners today?
I could try to say something. I have been following the movement going on in Goa and in Tamil Nadu with trying to stop all the coal projects, and I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for the incredible work that you're doing, and if there is any way in which we can be of any help sitting so far away, but any kind of press release or public statement or something, please let me know. I would be very happy to be of any help. And thank you so much for organizing this wonderful panel and for all the amazing work that you all do.
Thanks so much, Praditi. Yeah, Patrick?
No, something similar. I mean, I don't think there's a single good thing about Corona other than us being able to link up on Zoom like this. And yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks. Really interesting. And I'd like to repeat Brototi's offer, of course. You know, I'm sitting here in the midst of a snowstorm, and it's really interesting to hear about this stuff.
Okay. Thanks all the panelists for your time. There is a last question, but I would request Sai to write to the panelists if possible, since we are out of time. Thanks all of you for coming in, and like Patrick said, One great thing about this is we can all do this together. Somebody in a snowstorm, somebody in Goa, we can all come together. And I hope that we can also do this live once in Goa, in the lovely venue where this normally happens in Asagaon. So thanks all of you, and thanks Nilankur for organizing this. And yeah, good day to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.